Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It is Thursday, March 10th. We're in Vancouver at the Metal Investor Forum. I'm here with one of the presenting companies that I invited. Craig Parry is the chairman of Vizsla Silver. If you're not familiar with it, Vizsla just put out a very impressive resource last week, about 105 million silver equivalent ounces, very high silver and gold grades. I think this is a great project. They're drilling with 10 rigs, going to be 13 tons of news flow through the rest of this year. There'll be another resource update later in the year. I'm going to touch on a couple of things with Craig. One thing I want to mention is that the CEO, Mike Connard, is actually in the U.S. on a roadshow, and this probably seems like a nothing thing, but the other thing they recently announced is they have moved up to NYSE Amex. So Vizsla is VZLA on the venture and VZLA on NYSE Amex. And I think that is actually going to be quite important because other silver developers I follow, like specifically Silvercrest, I know 70 or 80% of their volume now is in the US, and that's simply a matter of, shoe leather, I think, literally going down and talking to funds, talking high net worth. And that's actually what Mike is doing right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some impact from that in the next couple of weeks, because obviously with what silver and gold are doing, it's a pretty good time to be delivering high-grade silver and gold results, which you did again this morning for the nth time. Put out some more great holes. Can you tell me a little bit about this Capella? Because Capella is one of the veins at Panuco. It's a little different because it's not subvertical the way most of the other ones you've been drilling are. But Mike mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago, Capella, these sort of more, they're not subhorizontal, like 30 degrees or something. That's sort of what the Mexicans were mining by and large?
Yeah, that's right. We knew of that sort of orientation in some of the higher grade zones because there was a thing called like Colorado, which when, my very first trip out there, or mine and Mike's very first trip, we noticed these guys mining. We were quizzing them about, what they were mining, these artisanal guys. And they said, it's about 2.5, 3 meters thick, and it's 3 or 4 kilograms silver. So we knew they were out there, and we really sort of just jagged upon this one, tagged it in one of the holes, testing tajitos. It's interesting. The more we drill in that area, the more veins we find, blind veins that we had no idea. We found Josephine, of course, which we've now done some trial EM over, and it shows that extends for that full length all the way parallel to the Napoleon vein. Dick Silito was out there a few months ago, back in October. I've known Dick for 20 years. Dick's never ever liked a project of mine in my life. So to get him out there and have him confirm that he really liked what we had was good. But one of his recommendations was in that whole southwest corner, go and drill a couple of fences of holes all the way along, overlapping, so that you tag everything all the way through. Right. And he said you might be surprised by what you see. And Josephine was just a thing we jagged by stepping out and trying to drill deeper down in Napoleon. Capella the same on the Tajitos vein. The interesting thing about that Capella vein is it's quite thick, blows out to a serious 40 metres plus thickness in some parts. So that could add serious ounces very, very quickly. Today's results, 8 metres of that was at an ounce gold equivalent, or about 2,100 grams silver equivalent. Yeah. So fabulously high grade over very thick intercepts. So I think, and it slopes off to the southwest, away from the town of Capella and away from Tajitos. So, that's a very exciting discovery.
I think it's important. Discovery. Is there a rig or two? I mean, I assume it's safe to assume you're still poking holes, or given the kind of stuff you've been pulling out.
Oh yeah, we for sure. I think we had really 3 spectacular hits in that news release today. Yeah. I would be surprised if there isn't more to come.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And just so if the viewers that don't recognize the name, Richard Silito is kind of the godfather of the epithermal geologic model. I mean, the classic model that everybody refers to and uses, and this is where we are in the model and stuff. It's Dick Silito's model. Yeah, he's kind of the guy.
He is the guy. I think the greatest living geologist anyway. I admire the bloke immensely, so to have that approval.
And okay, so another thing I want to ask you about, because a lot of subscribers ask about it, I'm not losing any sleep over this myself, but I know one of the things with Panuco, one of the things that makes Vizsla so attractive is when they bought this project, this was a project, it's got a small mill on it, but as importantly, arguably more importantly, most of the permits you would need for mining in several areas are already there. And anybody who follows and owns mining companies knows, you know, if there's anything that's just been a horror show for the last decade or more, it's permitting. You guys are like way ahead of the game because of the tenure that you've got there. But I do get asked a lot, like, okay, well, if these guys have a mill and they get this and they get that, you know, how come they're not trying to mine it right away? I mean, and I know the decision tree to decide where you start and the kind of scale you mine and stuff. It's not as simple as it looks. And let's remember, guys, they only had a resource as of like a week ago, and you can't really do anything before that. So just what, in terms of the company management's thinking, like, what do you need to do to get to that decision?
Yeah, so there's a few key things there. Of course, you know, first things first, resource. You need to have the ounces there proven up. That will convert to reserves. You need to have in place your AHITO agreement. So you need to be able to access the land and have agreements with the community. Well, we've now got 3 of those, the key ones in place. That gives us 35 years of life with those partners on the ground, so we can build the project on that basis. You need a mining permit, and you need a mill, a permitted mill. Well, we've got a permitted mill. There are other permitted mills in the area that we like the look of. Can't say too much about that, of course, but watch this space. We're working on a few things there. And then the mining permits, as you mentioned, there are certain areas that are already permitted for mining. I don't think that covers everything we need to do, but Mexico, relatively straightforward to go and get mining permitted. And of course, we've got that very high grade core close to the surface at the centre of Panuco. I think, don't quote me on this, but there's about 13 million ounces, 14 million ounces, a bit over 600 grams per tonne.
Right, that's Gallinero, is it?
Gallinero. That's very close to an actual operating mill that's there already. So we're weighing all of those things up. You can't, you know, you don't want to rush into it. I know Mike hints that, you know, we could have mining going on sooner than anyone expects. You know, that gives a hint as to what we're thinking. I think, you know, we've had the idea that a lot of people say, well, why don't you, you've got so many targets and so many ounces to prove up, keep going and drilling, which is, it'd be bloody very helpful if we pay for some of that exploration work out of cash flow.
Right.
So I think, you know, over the past few months, we've really got our head around that, where, you know, not singularly focused, but certainly obsessed by the idea of getting into production sooner rather than later. Right. So, you know, we'll keep working through that. I think you'll see at some point late this year, early next year, something of a PEA. Right. But you know, because it's such a low cost approach to mining, probably actually don't need a full feasibility study to go into production. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. As I think you know, I mean, I followed the original Silvercrest, the current version of Silvercrest. I followed from the day it listed, and I pounded. I did everything but call my subscribers broker and put the bloody order in for them, because it was about as obvious a buy as I ever saw. But one of the things that was interesting about Silvercrest, they get to the position, and I would argue that Vizsla is kind of there now as well, where I remember when they were kind of getting close to making that production decision, and they're kind of working on permits in the background and stuff. And there was this period where the market was obsessing about, as they always do when a mining company gets to this stage, you know, what's the finance package going to look like? Like, how much debt? I mean, how much dilution is there going to be? And I can remember telling subscribers back then, like, and I meant it as a joke at the time, where I said, you know, Eric will probably just do an overnight bought deal to pay for the mill. He did an overnight bought deal to pay for the mill. And frankly, given the kind of capital numbers we're probably looking at Panuco, Craig could probably do an overnight bought deal to pay for the mill. It's not, you got a lot of leeway, a lot of flexibility.
I think you're right. I think you're spot on. You know, it'd be nice to have a debt piece if we need it, but you know, what was Eric's capex there? 110, 120 million. I don't think ours would be anywhere near that. Like, you know, it will be a fraction of that, particularly if we can buy another mill or use the El Coco mill. So it won't be a lot of money. And you know, I think we'd finance it very readily.
Yeah. I don't think it'd be hard at all.
Yeah, but I love that idea of funding. You know, we've got 13 rigs turning. Our burn's probably about $2 million a month as we speak. It's a pretty solid burn rate, but funding that work going forward out of cash flow would be a brilliant outcome for shareholders. So we are focused on doing that work and getting there as soon as we can.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, great story, great project, great management team. They put out a really good resource. There'll be another one coming. Like Craig said, 13 rigs going 120,000 meters this year. Just great news flow as far as the eye can see from here on out. Vizsla Resources, VZLA on the venture, and VZLA on NYSE Amex. Thanks for coming by, Craig.
Good on you. Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
Much appreciated.